What a time to be this man. He just looks like a normal guy, right? But that is Daniel Weinman. He won the World Series of Poker 2023 main event for $12.1 million. Million dollar. I was gonna say
what?
I was gonna say $1 million, but you had to come in.
Sorry,
that.
It felt like you were just gonna. I couldn't tell if you were gonna get it right.
All right. We're here to do a thing.
Okay.
Let's do the thing. The question is, did it have to be this hand where he won the main event? He was the favorite for a lot of the time at the final table. He had the experience and he had the chips. He got heads up with Stephen Jones. Did this hand, especially from Stephen Jones's perspective, have to go down this way, or could Jones have survived for a few more, hours even? Could he have won the main event?
I mean, if he survives this hand, he absolutely could have won the main event, right? Like, he would have had chips, and it's all it takes, Grant. It's chips and a dream.
All right, so let's go through it and see if we could have done anything differently as Jones, because that's the real question here, and that's what's probably been itching Stephen Jones a little bit, especially as the internet weighs in and craps all over him all the time. We have our opinions. He played the hand. Let's see how he did.
Okay.
All right. Pre-flop, whatever. Here we go. Here's the flop. The most interesting thing is that Weinman chooses to check raise. What do you think about that?
I think it makes a lot of sense. It's completely reasonable on a board like this where he's going to have a lot of bluffs as well, spades. But there's a lot of gut shot straight draws as well. So you want to have a reasonable amount of value as well as your bluffs. Of course, King Jack is a pretty good hand to do it with when your head's up. King Jack rates to be the best hand almost always. We block one of the hands we most don't want him to have, which is pocket kings.
Yeah,
so
having a card above the jack is a big deal here.
Yep. And of course, also, we can get called by worse, right? Like this hand right here that Stephen Jones has. He can't fold this hand for a check raise, not heads up.
Right. Kicker does matter here. Kicker matters, and that's a big reason why Weinman raises, I believe. I don't think he's going to raise a hand like Jack 4, something like that.
Right.
I think it's just going to be a good kicker hand. And it's great because Jones actually has a hand that has very little equity against King Jack, but it absolutely has to call on a board with gut shots and 2 spades.
Yep. So this is a good play.
Right.
I think.
Fine. We're here. Everybody did everything right.
Yeah.
It's the turn, and what happens on the turn that we really have to get into, and it's what's been poured over by the internet, where Weinman continues on the rather innocuous 4 of clubs, right? It's not a spade. It does complete some straights, but those are unlikely, especially for Jones. More likely for Weinman to have made a straight than Jones.
Yeah, Jones can have like the ace 3. That's the one for him.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah.
Yeah. So Weinman continues. It doesn't seem like a mistake to continue.
No, and he goes relatively big at $38.5 million into what, 53 and change, right? That seems reasonable too. But it also puts, I guess Jones thinks he's now at an inflection point in the hand.
And I kind of think he is too. And we discussed this at length on our podcast, which you should check out if you want a more in-depth discussion on this. But Jones has a conundrum here because he does have a good hand. The board has not really changed in any significant way. Weinman is very unlikely to have made 2 pair. It may be once in a blue moon, but that is not usually the type of hand that he's going to check raise on the flop, a hand that makes 2 pair on this 4.
Correct.
So sure, he could have 3-6 suited or he could have ace 3. Those are very unlikely hands within his range as well. He can have some better jacks, and maybe as Jones, we know that. He can have a couple of sets, perhaps, 5s and deuces. Other than that, he has a lot of spade combos.
Right. He's got the suited 2 pairs also, of course.
Yeah, the suited 2 pairs.
Yeah, but there's not too many of those for sure. And the spade combos are the thing that we're beating, and we might want to shut out of their equity and just take it down right now.
Well, yeah, that's the question. What's the plan if we decide to call? Because calling feels like the natural play to me.
Yes.
If I were playing this hand, to be in position, call, and reevaluate on the river. So let's say we do call, and we have about 110 million left going into the river, something like that. On innocuous rivers, like the 7 of not spades, and if Weinman shoves, what's the plan?
It's hard to imagine that Weinman would decide to shove spades that often when we go call, especially if we call the check raise on the flop. But at the same point, this is a pretty good hand to call with, right? It doesn't block any of the bluffs, which is something that we so often are going to have, Jack 8 with the 8 of spades. And we're like, well, this is one of the worst hands to call with now, that gets here. Jack 8 doesn't block the straight draws, doesn't block the, that are now 1 pair but don't think they're good, and doesn't block any of the spade draws. I'm not sure if we're calling or not, but we're going to have to think long and hard and strongly consider calling it off, I think, if the 7 of not spades comes.
Right, which is a little bit icky Because if you're in Weinman's shoes and you get called 38 million on the turn by Jones and you have spades and then spades miss on the river, you're like, well, what did Jones get here with that he's actually going to fold? And it's going to have to be a weak jack. That's what we have to hope that he has if we're going to shove, because everything else is going to call except for spades, which we block by having spades. So the fact that Weinman's most likely bluffs that get to the river and then continue bluffing block the hands that he wants Jones to have, make it not as good of a situation for Jones to call the turn and call the river.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of a conundrum, and it feels like, sure, the first thought in your mind might be if Jones moves in here, which of course he does, he can't get called by a worse hand. I think that's accurate. I don't think Weinman has Jack 7 here. I don't think he's ever check raising Jack 7. I think that the kicker's too weak. I don't think there's ever a hand in Weinman's range that calls that is a worse made hand than what Jones has. Maybe he could have ace X of spades and has like the super combo draw. Maybe he could call off with something like that.
Yeah, maybe. It's going to take something like that, though.
Yeah. But those are rare. So this is a pure equity denial move.
Yes.
And Jones is getting dunked on for that, but I actually don't hate it that much. I think it's all right. I think it's definitely not my favorite of the plays that are available. I think calling is my favorite, but I admit there are a lot of problems with calling, as we just found out. It's hard to figure out what to do on the river on any card, really.
It would really suck to call on the turn and fold the river to a bluff, and instead of getting this huge pot that's in front of us right now, we lose an extra 38 million. Like that sounds horrible.
Yeah.
And people will make fun of you for that too. You folded top pair on the river, blah blah. The internet will kill you for that too.
Yeah. So I think this is just a lesser of two evils spot, and I think probably the lesser of two evils is the call. But I could be convinced by a convincing argument that to move in is the better play.
Yeah. I think I lean towards call also. In fact, I do. But I don't hate the move in either. And I think if you think you're a worse player than Weinman, maybe you say like sometimes top pair is just too good a hand for me. I don't want to have to like make a wrong decision on the river. I'm afraid of scare cards. I'm afraid of a million things. I'm going to move in now and put the burden on him. It can't be the end of the world to do that.
Yep, which is what he does. And Weinman has a relatively easy decision when all of the draws have missed, and his hand is just way too high in the distribution to fold. And that is how the main event ended.
I mean, it's a pretty good deal for Weinman. He's losing to some things, but like Ace Jack plus, there just aren't that many of those hands out there.
And turns out he had 93% and it held. So
woo!
That's
93%.
a nice feeling.
For $5.5 million more, 93%. Sign me up.